I'm King Link and it's the middle of May, so it's time for the Game Pass May 2022 review. It is a smaller month with only 11 titles released on PC, but there are some amazing games here. I played each game for a night, and at least one of these games I played to completion, with others waiting for their turn. I'll tell you about the games and who should check them out. Let's get started with... Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion, a hilarious journey. I tend to dislike humorous games because they often try too hard to be funny and end up being a weaker game and an unfunny experience. But Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion had me laughing hard the entire time. This is a funny, surreal experience, but also a solid game with hints of a classic top-down Legend of Zelda gameplay. This is a shorter title. I finished it in about 2 hours, but there are a few bonuses that I could chase down as well. The story works and makes the entire experience humorous so that you're going to want to see what happens next or who you're going to meet. It's a perfect length for the idea and story as well as not overstaying its welcome. Pick this up if you like humor or just want to see where the story goes. There are a ton of great scenes and I'll eventually replay this because I had a great time when I covered it for the Humble Choice. This is the perfect palate cleanser as well, so if you want a game you can easily finish in a single sitting, check this one out. "7 Days to Die", almost 10 years of early access. This is my second time covering 7 Days to Die. I actually played it back on Humble Monthly in November 2018, and after 6 hours then, I was disappointed with it. Not much has changed. This is still a survival game where you build a base, fight a large horde of zombies, and while the combat does feel a little bit better, I still really question why I would want to play this particular survival game. To be fair, I'm not a huge fan of survival games, and I prefer something closer to Minecraft for base building. There is also a lot of similar titles with similar ideas, but I don't really see why I choose this almost any other. The biggest issue for me was the corpse running after dying, but I really question why I even care about the random assortment of junk I was collecting. There is a strong multiplayer community around it, but again, I'm not really sure what is bringing people back to this. Pick this up if you like survival games and need a new one. I may not be the best person to judge this game. I'm not a fan of the genre, as I've made clear, and I think zombies are played out, but I also think I'd rather go play, Back 4 Blood, Ark, Survival Evolved, or anything else if I was asked to. This one just isn't my thing. Research and Destroy, third-person XCOM. Research and Destroy is interesting. Players will control 3 scientists who are fighting against a supernatural horde filled with zombies, ghosts, and werewolves. Each of the scientists can move and shoot for 8 seconds per turn, and will need to use that time to position themselves, shoot enemies, and activate objectives. It's an interesting mechanic where a combination of skill and planning is used to execute solid game plans. Outside of the combat, players will also have to play a strategy board game to build up their scientific outposts, find new targets, and defend from invading hordes. It all works well together, though at the core this is a more complicated tactical shooter with the player's skill having a decent effect on the experience. Pick this up if you like the look of this. It's clever with some of the short introductions per monsters, but for the most part it is a turn-based third-person shooter, which is a fresh concept that I really haven't seen too often. It's almost like a single-player Lemniscate without the time loop mechanic.
Oh, Lizbert? Is that you? Oh, thank Grump you're alive! Too bad I'm dying, though.
Bugsnax, an amazing journey capturing those delicious snacks. That's snacks with an X. Bugsnax has a great style. You have these characters called Grumpuses who are running around on a new island and eating various bug snacks. As characters eat these strange creatures, they actually change their bodies into different forms depending on what they eat, or rather what you feed them. It's a clever and interesting take on a dress-up game. The main part of Bugsnax is satisfying different characters' desires, which mostly involve finding and trapping new Bugsnax. There's a variety of tools and a decent amount of challenges while capturing new creatures. For one creature you might have to fling your trap at them in midair, for another you might have to stun them to capture them. There are around about 100 creatures, and it's rather enjoyable trying to collect them all. Pick this up if you like the cute visuals or the interesting challenge. This is a game that you can play with your kids, but also a game I enjoyed as an adult. There are quite a few good challenges and interesting puzzles as well as a large, vibrant world that is worth exploring. I actually ended up playing through this entire game, and you know what? You probably should too. Unsouled, an average attempt at the Dark Souls formula. Unsouled looks good at times, not always, but at least the art style can stand out here. Players will fight their way across large levels and beat up enemies using a combo system that talks about letting the player fluidly move from one attack type to the next if they can time their attacks correctly. It's a good promise and adds an interesting mechanic to the game, but becomes so overly complicated and unnecessary it's not as fun to utilize. The enemies in Unsouled are okay, it's the bosses that look the best. However, most of these are rather easy to beat down with some simple dodges thrown in. At times the graphics can shine, especially in those boss fights, but the story here is weak. The real problem is that the game feels so inconsistent, and it's almost like each level was created at a different point in time, which actually makes sense with the game being an early access title, but it produced an inconsistent experience. Pick this up if you want a visually stunning but relatively easy game. This is trying to reach a certain style and layer in a bit of the Souls-like genre, but never gets close to the greatness of that genre. It still has a lot of interesting graphics to look at. Loot River. Sliding block puzzles, soul-like, roguelite. That's actually a lot in one game. Loot River has a couple of interesting features. The player moves around on these large block platforms that they can control with the right thumbstick while they're running around with the left thumbstick and fighting. It's a good concept, but in practice the game just doesn't have that fluidity it needs to pull off the idea. A major issue with Loot River is the combat will feel clunky and slow, but that's likely on purpose. It feels like the developer took a lot of inspiration from the Souls-like genre and wanted a combat system that required purposeful attacks. Sometimes this works, but other times this just comes off as a mess. It's a top-down view that breaks how the system is supposed to work, and I almost wonder if it had a third-person view over the shoulder that maybe it might feel better. The real problem with Loot River is it's a triumvirate of different ideas. If it wasn't a sliding block puzzle, the design could focus on the combat in the arenas more. If it wasn't a Souls-like game, the movement would be a little more fluid for the roguelite and sliding block puzzles, and if it wasn't a roguelite, the story and better designed levels would feel, of course, better. Instead, you have randomly designed, non-challenging sliding block level design, a slow, clunky Souls-like combat on those sliding blocks, and a roguelite, which means everything is randomized all the time. Pick this up if you haven't had enough roguelites or Souls-like. If you can actually enjoy those two put together by themselves, this still can be fun, as there really isn't that much puzzle in the sliding blocks, and it's a novel movement system at the very least. But roguelites and Souls-likes do feel like they're at odds with each other here. Oh well. Trek to Yomi. A great samurai game that reminds me of the style of Akira Kurosawa. Trek to Yomi has amazing graphics at times. This can feel like it almost came out of an old black and white samurai movie. The characters are extremely well detailed in cutscenes and the camera angles are perfect at times. The use of lighting, foliage, and pacing are exceptional, and it's very clear where the inspiration came from in this game. But whether it's Seven Samurai, Hidden Fortress, or Yojimbo, Trek to Yomi has some of that Akira Kurosawa DNA in its art design. The combat is acceptable as well. Players will fight many enemies, but almost every showdown with a normal enemy takes mere seconds, with the groups of enemies bringing the only real challenge. Eventually enemies will gain armor, but even so the parry system is very forgiving and players will be able to mow down enemies if they remember to act with purpose. The feeling is more that you're a samurai master rather than an all-powerful deity, but overall this feels excellent. If you're looking for a challenge though, well, Trek to Yomi probably lacks that. Pick this up if you like old samurai movies or you just want a very beautiful game. There's so much style in this title that I forgive the weaker enemy selection because it's the levels and locations that I pushed through this title for. I have returned to play more because I really want to see how this entire experience turned out. Citizen Sleeper. Resource management in space. Citizen Sleeper starts with the player waking up on a distant space station. His body is failing him, he's starving, and he needs money and rest. From there, players must spend their days trying to satisfy all their needs and wants. Each day involves the player getting action dice and applying those dice to different jobs to accomplish goals. Citizen Sleeper reminds me of Norco and Disco Elysium, as it's a completely story-driven game. Players will meet many different characters, and through them will get different opportunities and challenges. The writing is good and kept me engaged, and the first hour of this game is intense as the player is struggling to meet the right people to earn very rare resources. However, after that opening hour, players start getting entirely too many of those resources and easily will have a run of the space station by the end. Even when a big bad danger arrives, it feels like Citizen Sleeper is afraid to give the players a bad ending, which is appreciated after 4 hours invested in an aggressive autosave, but also really removes any desire to replay the game and try to get a different or better story. Pick this up if you'd like a strong narrative. This is very much about the story, and while there will be a decent amount of time where the player has to chase resources and the dice component is rather important, the majority of this experience is meeting people and learning about their struggles. Danganronpa 2. Goodbye Despair, Anniversary Edition. Danganronpa The Island Adventure. If you haven't played the original Danganronpa, well, go play that. It's already on Game Pass, and while Danganronpa 2 is better in almost every way, it's also a direct sequel and will heavily rely on players having experienced the first game, and really they should. Danganronpa is an excellent visual novel that is both a combination of a dating game and Ace Attorney with a far darker story. This is a game where high school kids will end up murdering each other and players will have to solve what happened, but that's the first game. This is just a light-hearted island adventure, right? Of course, the same dark tones as the first game return here, but like I said, everything here is better. The island motif is really good, the characters are just as interesting as in the first game, and similar to the rest of the series, the ending is the weakest part, unfortunately. But that doesn't stop the trials and stories from being better told. I will also say the trials mini-games are far better, which was something I disliked in the first title. Pick this one up if you like the first Danganronpa. Again, I do have to stress, if you haven't played that one, you need to start with that title. And if you think the first one could have been better, well, definitely check this one out. I think this is the best game in the series, and it's another masterpiece from Spike Chunsoft. This War of Mine, Final Cut. Depression. American History X is an excellent movie, but it's also a deeply disturbing look at neo-Nazis back when they weren't really referenced in the news every 5 minutes. It's a film I enjoyed watching, but I don't think I could ever return to because the subject matter is too much. This War of Mine feels like it reaches those same levels early on in the game. This is a game that is both hard to play, yet still very interesting. Players are given a randomized group from the selection of 12 characters, each with unique characteristics, backstories, and features, and players will have to prepare their house during the day and scavenge at night to stay alive in their war-torn country. The group will be tempted to consider potentially stealing from others to keep themselves alive. Resources are never plentiful here, and players will constantly have to micromanage how to survive, be fed, and stay alert while enemies try to rob players, as well as scavenge new loot for new projects. I think the biggest point for me was when one of my characters was forced to kill 2 people while scavenging, and in doing so she actually fell in a deep depression that lasted for multiple days, and I couldn't fault her. So much of this War of Mine affected me in the same way. I was drained after playing this. This isn't a joyful experience, and yet it still felt like a meaningful one, just one I kind of want to put up on the shelf for a while, potentially forever. Pick this up if you want to make hard life choices and feel the impact of them. I've said a few times that it's not the armies or leaderships of countries who suffer in war, it's the civilians, both displaced and those who endure the conflict. This War of Mine is a game that shows that clearly, but due to how it's depicted, it's a lot to take in. Eiyuden Chronicles Rising. I'm trying to get that pronunciation right, but this is a fantastic game. Eiyuden is a side-scrolling RPG where players will fight different enemies, collecting their loot, then returning to town to distribute it to different quests or use it for crafting. It's a great game and the controls here feel very smooth. The writing is engaging, and while the game starts off making it seem like the entire game is going to be about trying to earn a mining license, before long the story leads the players to the mines and gives them free reign to explore, take on different tasks, and even partner with different characters. A majority of tasks in Eiyuden Chronicles also helps build up the town and unlock different businesses to interact with, so as the player progresses, they're also building up the surrounding locations. It's a great way to allow players to feel a part of the progression of the game. The combat reminds me a bit of the Tales of series, with more of a focus on the standard beat 'em up or a side-scrolling platformer, but there are strong RPG elements in here as well. Pick this up if you like side-scrolling platformers. That's really what this game is at its core. This was kickstarted, but the main developer's previous titles, Suikoden 1, 2, and I think 3, are excellent, and Eiyuden feels like it's a smaller experience but will live up to that legacy. I definitely will return to play more of this. And actually, while researching this title, I actually found out that Eiyuden was a Kickstarter. This is just a companion piece of the main game though, so this is almost a prequel to that final game, but it feels so good on its own, it's probably worth playing now. And that's what I have for this month. Now, this has been a shorter month with only 11 titles to talk about, but there have been some amazing games that I'm glad to be talking about. But it is also a bit weaker, and the fact that this is the 5th month of 2022 and the games have just started to slow down is actually kind of impressive for Microsoft. Usually the fall is the big release window, but we've had a steady stream of titles, so Game Pass slowing down now is fine because it'll give players a chance to go back and check out older releases or just play more of the titles from previous months, though the upcoming weeks look pretty good. We'll get to that in a minute. I am just going to go into the top 5 of what I'm going to recommend this month though. The 5th strongest game this month is Turnip Boy Commits Tax Evasion. Now, I found this game extremely hilarious the first time I played it. It's still funny here, but it's this low on the list because, well, okay, this is a bite-sized experience. It's 2 hours, but it was a great 2 hours. The 4th strongest game this month is Dananronpa 2 Goodbye Despair. Another great story by Spike Chunsoft, but it is held back by requiring that first game to be played beforehand, and the dark story is going to turn off some people. It's still very well told, and there were a lot of reveals that surprised me. The 3rd strongest game this month is Eiyuden Chronicles Rising. This is the game I'm looking forward to playing more of. It's a great concept, great execution, and I love the flow of this game. Admittedly, the animations aren't always perfect, but with the understanding that this came from Kickstarter and wasn't even the main project that people funded, it's actually a huge surprise. The 2nd strongest game is Bugsnax. Now, I love the character design here, that's why it was on the thumbnail, and the gotta catch 'em all experience when trying to get every creature in the game is very strong. This is the title I finished this month because I just wanted to see how it all turned out and I was very pleased. And the strongest of this month is To Yomi. It's the graphics. This game looks so damn good, and maybe it's just because I'm a fan of those classic black and white samurai movies, but this is a game that really spoke to me. It's one of the few times I will ignore the gameplay overall and point at the visual style as the reason to experience this game. And that's what I have for this month. Now, this video has been delayed for a day or two depending on when I could finally get it out. I had some small issues come up. However, that allows me to take a look at what's coming up for the rest of this month, and boy, does it look good. If this is a shorter video, the next 2 weeks already look packed. I already knew about Sniper Elite 5 and Pac-Man Museum Plus and was looking forward to them quite a bit. However, Her Story is one of my favorite titles, Jurassic World Evolution is a major get, and, well, I guess I'm going to have to finally learn cricket. Yeah, right. Also, I can tell you what's leaving, which I actually have 2 lists here. On the app, I see The Wild at Heart, which I covered a couple months ago on Humble Choice, The Catch, Enter the Gungeon, which is really good, Remnant from the Ashes. However, then we also have Xbox Game Wire, which has this list, Farming Simulator 19, which is actually being replaced this next 2 weeks, Resident Evil 7, which is excellent, Spellforce 3, Super Hot, Mind Control Delete, which is absolutely must play, you probably should check that out before it goes, and Yes, Your Grace. Thank you for watching this far. As always, like, subscribe, and comment because that's what YouTube needs for people to keep discovering this channel. Or if you want to go that extra mile, consider sharing this video with others online. That would be absolutely amazing. I'll be popping up more videos for you to check out if you want to see more from me. See you next time.